I'm Gabby and I work with the Inherently Human team. And today I'm joined by the wonderful Caroline Robinson, who founded the Worker Support Centre. She's here today to talk about the UK Seasonal Worker Scheme. So, Caroline, perhaps you could start by telling me about seasonal workers in the UK. What is a seasonal worker? And more specifically, what's a seasonal migrant worker?
Yeah, so seasonal workers have been a part of our agricultural system for as long as we can all remember. There's a core role that they play, which is to pick the fruit and vegetables at the peaks and troughs times of the agricultural season. And the seasonal worker visa really replaces a visa that we had since the end of the Second World War called the Seasonal Agricultural Workers Scheme. The seasonal worker visa was introduced in 2019, and that was in response to concerns about shortages in agriculture. Part of the reason why we already had decreasing numbers of workers coming from within the EU to do work prior to Brexit was because of the increased economic condition of those countries. So
Mm,
whilst we previously saw large numbers coming, for example, from Poland,
mm,
there was less of a pull for those workers to come to the UK to work when jobs became more lucrative
right.
in these countries of origin. And I think what we see now with Central Asian countries is that many of the workers that we work with talk about the alternative in their country having been migration to Russia for work. And so
Right.
now really very few alternative options for work. The Worker Support Centre, we exist to prevent labour exploitation and to promote decent work. We have five areas of our work, and one is the support that we deliver, direct support to workers. We target that work, I should say, by the risk that we see in terms of the risks that there are in supply chains, in sites of work, in workplaces, and the risks that we find in the immigration system. And that's why the seasonal worker visa is is part of our focus, because we find there's a high risk for workers on this visa in very isolated and quite high risk workplaces in terms of injuries, fatalities, the type of work that people are doing. I think another risk is just the sheer number of different nationalities that are represented,
Right.
not only in terms of those recruitment corridors, pathways, but also in terms of one thing that I didn't say about the visa is there is no English language requirement, and it's quite a crucial part of the visa. The
Mm,
workers that arrive, I would say around 95% of the workers that we support don't speak really any English,
okay.
very limited English. And so one of the factors that is a risk is the fact that there's so many different languages. And so when
Mm,
you support organizations, but also when you're trying to produce very practical things like complaints forms for labor enforcement bodies, they need to now be published in a whole range of languages, and those languages might change from year to year. Some of the things that will make workers the most angry is things like being treated inhumanly.
mm,
So being called by a number rather than by their name, or not being provided with toilets near the fields. So if workers are needing a toilet break, they're being told by supervisors in those cases to go to the toilet in a bush nearby and to get back to work. And work talk about those instances as just not really, yeah, not really feeling like they're being treated like a human being and being
mm.
respected as a colleague in a workplace. And workers will have concern for health and safety issues as well. So in that situation where workers don't have toilets and hand washing facilities near the fields, they'll raise that with us as a concern about the fact that they're picking the fruit that people are eating, but unable to keep themselves clean in order to do so. The workers might seek to change the situation they're facing on a farm, and we as the Worker Support Centre might support them to do that. But if they can't change those conditions, if they're being poorly treated, or if they're not being paid for the hours they're working, or if they're living in really unsafe accommodation, and in some cases we'll see that, they would try to change to an alternative place of employment. And many workers do that because the alternative might not be to return home, because they've taken out quite a large debt to come to the UK to pay legal and in some cases illegal recruitment costs. The only option workers have at that point is to go to their scheme operator rather than any other scheme operator. So if their scheme operator says to them, we don't have any other jobs on any other farms, that worker can be trapped, and practically trapped if their debt is so significant they have no choice but to remain.
Right.
That's quite significant. It's a significant risk in relation to abuse. It's a really significant risk in relation to risks of exploitation. The kind of primary point to make is that workers really are the experts on what they need and what's working for them. And we learn from workers on farms where they feel like they're treated with respect and they feel like they're treated as colleagues in a workplace, that that's possible and that that could happen. And it would make a really significant difference, not only to the risks, because I think it encourages workers to speak up when they're worried about something, but also to their mental health. The Health and Safety Executive identified these workplaces as some of the highest risk across Great Britain, and workers coming in, maybe in many cases new to those workplaces, then facing risks related to equipment that they might be using or chemicals that they might be administering, can quite not easily, but when it goes wrong, it goes very wrong. And those are cases that we see. And so we really urge those to be taken extremely seriously in terms of training, in terms of personal protective equipment being provided to workers that is of a sufficient quality to really protect them, and ensuring that workers are doing the jobs that they're trained for, and supporting workers to access independent support, to be able to talk to trusted organizations about the issues that they're facing, and not seeing that as a threat, but seeing that as a part of the process of growing an industry that we can be proud of. We're part of a group called the Seasonal Worker Interest Group, which is a group of organizations that work directly with workers or on behalf of workers on the seasonal worker visa. And we've put together a range of proposals for how this scheme could be reviewed. And I think that's what I would say is upfront is a sort of primary objective, is that the scheme is reviewed for the risks that it poses workers. And that's something that was proposed by the government when it first introduced a pilot. So the previous government, when it introduced this seasonal worker pilot in 2019, was that it would review and evaluate it, and it would include risks of modern slavery as part of that. It's not happened, and we've subsequently seen that huge increase of the scheme. So I think that's one sort of primary thing that needs to happen, is to really look at the risks across the board to workers. And when you dive into that, there's many areas that could be addressed. And in fact, some that are particularly pertinent to the government right now.